Bom dia, boa tarde e boa noite, né? Para os que estão no Brasil, bom dia. Extend my warm regards to the Dean of School of Language and Literature and Cultural Studies, Professor, and the Dean of Teaching and Research Postgraduate, Professor Marcela Salles, and the head of culture and education of Embassy of Brazil, Mr. Lucas de Brito Lima. Also, Professor, the chairperson of Professor Osmar Moreira, and I would like to extend my warm regards to Professor Abdul Nasser from the Center for Canadian University and Latin American. And thank you so much, Professor Nasser, for take your time. And he also going to be our keynote speaker today. Thank you so much, Professor, for taking your time. I am very pleased to welcome all participants for the release of the book, Cultural Industry, What Can Culture and Literature Do? I acknowledge all the people who have worked hard to make this book release and dream come true. Of course, first of all, the editors, my colleagues, Professor who has been working hard in this project. Thanks so much, Professor. Let me work along with you. Professor Dr. Mukesh Kumar, who also helped me to organize the event in 2018 conference, the International Colloquium. But I can't forget to thank the author. Without them, this job will not be possible. That book will not be possible. Then I would really want to thank all the authors of the book who have put their time and effort to write such good art. The notable of the authors have been the search of inspiration for us, the editors, as it helped us to sail through this text today. And as we know, some of 2018, we had the event Culture and Literature between Brazil and India held here in Jawaharlal first. And that pandemic moment, that this kind of situation that they have some social interaction is kind of difficult. And I am really happy that in those moments, there, 2018, we have the opportunity to have here in Genio, Professor Paulo Garcia, Professor Antonio Herrera, Professor Edil, and it was wonderful to have that opportunity of interaction. And
can you postpone?
And that conference was very informative, as a myriad of topics were present in the process of the conference. Should ask the editors to go one more step further and to try to compare the article present in the conference and the shape of the book. Personally, for me, it was a great pleasure and enriching experience through the manuscript of the articles, which were so vividly and meticulously pinned down by the authors. Somebody else asked, this book, bring it to the fore,
okay, so this one you have, right?
On the margins of the hegemonic discourse.
Okay, you did not do the homework.
Allows the social cultural analysis of the sum of the present times. Cultural science and popular culture have been analyzed at the late and the dialogues are established behind the this and attempted to establish national dialogue on different issues, marginalize discourse, difference and proximities and of culture and literature. Each chapter gives an overview of the linguistic, social, cultural, and religious diversity of Brazil. This book includes professors and research from the postgraduate program in cultural criticism at the Bahia State University, the campus of Alagoinhas, the literature and culture program of the Federal University of Bahia, and professors and research scholars from Jawaharlal Nehru University in Kenya. Last but not least, I would like to say that my experience in this esteemed Jawaharlal Nehru University has been very enriching one that has given me a lot of perspective and insights. Teaching the Portuguese language and also culture gave me a chance to interact with both the foreign students from different countries and students from different states in India who were in different courses, pursue different academic goals and aspirations which accompany me in all my endeavors. And then this book is one of the achievements that JNU experience has gave to me. I hope that many of the projects continue to be held in our partnership between Brazil and India. Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite Professor Lipe Biswas to begin with the procedure of the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Aris. I would now like to invite Professor Mazhar Asif, our Dean and Chair of CS Pillars, to give the welcome address. Professor Asif.
Namaskar, everyone, physically and online joined with us. We'll start with the from a Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Padanti, अर्थात वल अव्वल वल आखिर वल ज़ाहिर वल बातिन. My dear friends, we in India have a great poet, Sufi, and musician. His name is Amir Khusro. He says, Zabane yar man Turki waman Turki namidan. The language of my beloved is Turkey, but unfortunately I do not know that language. The same formula applies on me. The language of my friends sitting here is Portuguese or Spanish, but unfortunately I do not know that language. Anyhow, love and emotion can be expressed without a language. I, Mazhar Asif, Dean of this school, am very pleased to welcome you today at School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies to release the book entitled Cultural Intersection, Brazil, India, What Can Culture and Literature Do? I would like to first of all to greet Mr. Lucas Brito de Brito Lima, Head of Culture Education, Embassy of Brazil, Professor Jose Bite de Carvalho, Rector of UNEB, Marcio Costa, Director of FAPESB, then our ex-professor, Professor Abdul Nafe from SIS, Osmar Moriro dos Santo, Chairperson of Post Criteria UNEB, Professor Edil Silva Costa, my dear colleagues from the Center participants and guests who are attending with us this afternoon. I extend my warm greeting to all of my esteemed colleagues, guests, all the participants, students who are with us. Dear friends, our School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies is considered to be one of the best schools in the world, where we do not only teach language, but we also teach culture, civilization, music, dance, and drama. Friends, you might be knowing that our culture or Sanskriti is considered to be one of the oldest in the world. There are 5 very good things in our DNA. Number 1 is Satya, 2 Dharma, 3 Shanti, 4 love and Ahimsa. If you combine all 5s, which just I mentioned, it becomes spiritualism. And our culture is based on spiritualism. All the civilization contemporary to India, either they were wiped out or they were renamed. But our culture is still alive. You might have heard a great poet, Iqbal, who says, यूनानो मिस्रो रूमा समिट गए जहां से, अब तक मगर है बाकी नामो निशा हमारा. यानी the culture contemporary to India, Yunan means Greek, Misr means Egypt, Roman means Roman Empire, all were wiped out from this surface or they were renamed. अब तक मगर है बाकी नामो निशा हमारा. But due to our philosophy, our culture, our civilization, our philosophy, we are still surviving and surviving with a flying color. This book is on Brazil-India relation. Our relation with Brazil is not very long. I think it is around 1500 when a person named Pedro Alvarez Cabral came to Goa. Since that, we have a good relation with Brazil. There are a number of classical dances which are very popular in Brazil. Our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi, is very popular in Brazil. Then our dance, our songs, our musics. There are ISKCON, Satya Sai Baba, Maharishi Yogi Bhakti Vedanta Foundations, and other arts very famous in Brazil. I, on behalf of the center and behalf of the school, offer my congratulations to the editor of the books, Edil Silva Costa, Rizan, and Mukesh Kumar, and pray for their better and prosperous life and future. I once again offer my sincere thanks to all of you who have joined this evening, and I hope after listening all these renowned scholars, we will be in a position to have a better understanding of our culture that we have with Brazil. With this word, once again, I welcome all of you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Professor Asif, for these warm words of welcome. I would now like to invite Professor Brito Lima to come and say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Lipi, but I'm not a professor. I'm a mere diplomat. Hello and good evening, India. Bom dia, Brasil. Professora Marcea Salles, Professor Mazhar Asif, Professor Osmar Moreira dos Santos, Professora Elisângela Figueiredo, Professor Redil Silva Costa, Professor Abdul Nafi, Dr. Lipi Ndigosen. JNU has been a partner and a friend of the Embassy of Brazil since 2017, when the lecture program started here and Professor Elisângela came to India. Since then, we have seen the number of students of Brazilian Portuguese increase, which gives me a lot of joy, as I am myself a fan of Portuguese and of our amazing literature. The level of commitment that students have demonstrated throughout these challenging times is even more encouraging and a sign of the quality of the courses offered at JNU. It is this kind of news that gives me hope that people-to-people connections between Brazil and India will continue to flourish, because it is people, not governments, that bring cultures together. It also gives me great satisfaction to see that an initiative that we supported back in 2018 has turned into a publication by JNU. The book deals with interconnections between Brazilian and Indian cultures, which at first glance might not seem like much. But if we dig just a little deeper, we see how in these two countries that were once colonies, not long ago, cultural independence, independência, or swatantrata, takes longer than the political process. We have our languages to bear witness to this. We see thus that these are two incredibly pluralistic and syncretic societies that continue to struggle with modernity. This diverse character is reflected throughout the 12 chapters of this book, which showed that it is possible to establish a dialogue between our cultures without having to access their European components. I thank the organizers of the book for this great initiative. The Embassy hopes that the partnership with JNU can continue to bear fruit, and we can see more such initiatives in the future. Our cultures have a lot to offer to one another, and for that to become a reality, we need ever more Indian students interested in the Portuguese language and Brazilian literature, as well as more Brazilians engaging with the fascinating traditions that India, as one of the world's oldest civilizations, has to offer. Thank you, and I give the floor to Dr. Lipi.
I now would like to welcome Professor Carvalho to join us in the event and say a few words. Professor Carvalho, the mic is yours.
Eu entendi que estava chamando o professor Márcio Papesco.
Não, não é você que está falando, é que o microfone está fechado.
Não, agora
tá.
Falando, mas foi chamada, eu entendi que estava chamando o professor Márcio da FAPESB, não?
Eu entendi, Márcia, então não sei, porque o som está meio ruim também. Desculpa.
Obrigada. Eu que agradeço, Regina.
Dá licença, o professor Márcio justificou que não vai poder participar. A FAPESB não vai estar representada. A professora Marcea que vai estar representando o professor Bitts, que é o reitor da universidade.
Como a gente esclarece isso, pode falar para eles?
Sim.
A Rosa saiu?
Por favor, Marcea.
Please, Professor Márcio wouldn't stay here. We want to know if, may I ask now? Desde meu inglês não é muito dos bons, então eu precisava, a Rosa teria que nos orientar. Ela saiu. Hi.
Hello, Professor?
Yes, the Professor Márcio wasn't here.
Yeah.
We would like to know if who talked now.
Yes, I invited now Professor Marcea Salles, who is here to represent the Honorable Rector, José Bitts. Professor Salles, it's an education doctor from Federal University of Bahia and postdoc from Federal University of Uberlândia. I think I am correct. And Professor, please, can you please give us some words? The mic is yours, please.
Yes, of course. Good morning, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be present in this event, present the magnificent Rector José Bitts de Carvalho. we would like to take, I would like to thank our host and ask permission to speak Spanish because my English is not so good. Inicialmente, me gostaria de salutar as autoridades presentes, professor Mazafá, Asif, presidente do Conselho de Estudos Espanhóis, Portugueses, Italianos e Latino-Americanos, Escola de Estudo de Língua, Literatura e Cultura, de Nova Delhi, Índia, senhor Lucas de Brito Lima, chefe de Cultura e Educação, Embaixada do Brasil, professor Abud Nafe, da Escola de Estudos Internacionais, Nova Delhi, Índia, e nossos professores de UNEB, Osmar Moreira e Edil Costa, de Brasil. Saludo também as pessoas que nos assistem e desejo que estejam todos bem, sanos e com a coragem necessária que nos pide este momento mundial atual. Para nós, em UNEB, este é um evento muito importante, principalmente porque se trata de fortalecer as redes de trabalho de Brasil e Índia. Felicitamos a los editores por el lançamento do livro eletrônico Cultura Intersection Brasil-Índia, What Can Culture and Literature Do? Provocado por el tema do lançamento deste livro, se nos insta a responder a provocação que pode fazer as culturas e a literatura, lo que sea necesário para assegurar a expansão das relações humanas entre estes dois países. Cultura e literatura são expressão da arte e escuchando a Ferreira Goulart, um escritor brasileiro, que nos disse que a arte existe porque a vida não é suficiente, destacamos a importância de estarmos juntos, Brasil e Índia, para superar as fronteiras territoriais e produzir ciência e conhecimento que nos puxa delante de los ogros por la garantia de la vida. Viva a relação mais estreita entre Brasil e Índia por la ciência e por la vida, que seja largo e frutífero.
Thank you, Professor. I would now like to invite Professor Abdul Nafe to give his talk on India and Brazil. The talk is titled Insights into Brazil and India. Professor Nafe, I offer you the mic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lipi Biswas. Good morning to all the participants who are in JNU and elsewhere in Delhi or India. And good morning to all those who are in Brazil. When Dr. Lipi asked me to make a presentation, she was insisting that I must present my insights about Brazil, and more so in terms of its culture and literary traditions, intermixing them with contemporary social, economic, and political dynamics. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I can send it to you later on. The compendium under celebration here is the outcome of a larger project underway entitled Emerging Transnational Powers and Their Cultural Seeds, under the coordinatorship of Professor Osmar Moreira dos Santos. Keeping that in mind, and the fact that the present compendium is the result of a seminar on common dialogues between Brazil and India, it's only appropriate that I remain confined to Brazil and India-Brazil equations, more so in the past 2 decades or so. I have a strong temptation to dabble into Brazil-India relationship in terms of their status as emerging powers, rising powers, the state of their present bilateral relationships and its future trajectories, the impact of pandemic on Brazil and Latin America in general, and its place in the post-pandemic global order. But I won't do that. I'm keeping myself strictly confined to the book and the interesting themes and issues contributors have raised and sought to answer. Some 30 years ago, a literary dialogue like this one perhaps would not have been possible. The fact that scholars from India and Brazil are celebrating the release of the book entitled Cultural Intersection, Brazil, India, What Can Cultures and Literatures Do, only shows the distance Brazil and India have traveled together over the past 2 decades or so. The two countries have not only risen in the consciousness of each other, but also in the consciousness of people and societies in far-off places. Why is this so? Their rising capabilities, their migrants and immigrants, their diasporic character, besides their cultural footprints, make them truly transnational societies. Obviously, there are convergences of interests and perception that go beyond political, diplomatic, and economic cooperation. And the book under discussion amply demonstrates that. In 2006, India and Brazil had agreed to label their bilateral ties as a strategic relationship. If you happen to visit the Indian Chancery in Brasilia, you would notice the stone plate which reads that this building is dedicated to the India-Brazil quote-unquote strategic partnership, meaning thereby India has literally written its fate with Brazil in stone, and nothing can change that. Such is India's confidence in its relationship with Brazil. In fact, if you read the 2006 joint statement, which was issued on the eve of declaration of the strategic partnership after the visit of President Lula, almost anything and everything under the sun has been included for bilateral dialogue and cooperation between the two countries. What I'm trying to emphasize upon is that Brazil and India are two unique nations, two societies that have an amazing expanse of convergences. And I see two major reasons for this convergence. Brazil and India belong to the global south. They are large, multi-ethnic, multiracial, federal democracies. There are imperfections and developmental challenges before both of them, but their nation-building work is in progress. Secondly, rest of the world impinge upon them in identical manner. Immanuel Wallerstein of the world system theory had once described Brazil as a country which is as a country of in-betweenity. The same can be said about India. These are in-between countries. They can do many things, but they cannot do anything, many things. This makes them engage with each other to unitedly ward off challenges and build on common opportunities. For the last 20 years or so, you invariably find Brazil and India together in varieties of multilateral, plurilateral, and bilateral fora, be it IBSA, IBSA, BRICS, BASIC, G4. Each one of these grouping has its own dynamics and brings again and again Brazil and India together. It is this southerly access of these two societies that is manifest in the compendium under discussion here. All the chapters and their writers explore aspects of life and society that continue to impact and intrigue their people. This book brings together scholars from three very unique universities: Jawaharlal Nehru University, the Bahia State University, and the Federal University of Bahia. These universities are somewhat unique in the sense that, given the composition of their student community and the research perspectives and themes they prioritize, reflect the problems and priorities of the underprivileged and the marginalized. The compendium here is a dialogue to identify and define proximities and distances between the two cultures. The authors discover an amazing array of commonalities of human experiences in the two very large, diverse societies. Before I talk on Brazil and the various themes covered in this book, I must confess that I don't know Portuguese language. Hence, what follows comes with this grave limitation, that's my inability to read or speak in Portuguese. In the preface of the book, the three editors clearly have stated the goal that all the contributors seek to effectively question the moment we live in. They bring in intellectuality and critical thinking from the margins of hegemonic discourses. The result is their unusually refreshing insights. What I have done is I have looked in the rest of the paper on all the 12 chapters and subdivided these 12 chapters in their themes into 7 major sub-themes. My first theme to elaborate upon is a quote from Juscelino Kubitschek, who was Brazilian president between 1955 and 1960 and had promised Brazil 50 years of progress in 5. So my first subtitle is 50 years of progress in 5 and making Delhi a world-class city. The decade of the 50s in Brazil, the decade of the 50s is when Brazil underwent massive transformations. Getulio Vargas had returned to the presidency in 1951, only to shoot himself dead in 1955. Getulio Vargas was deposed in 1945 after being president for 15 years. Vargas shaped Brazilian politics and economic development the way no other president before or after him has done. In his long political career, Vargas made huge political shifts from the highly corporatist Estado Novo of the 30s to the authoritarian populism of the later period, which made many Brazilians call him, quote unquote, the father of the poor. Vargas put Brazil on the path of industrialization, massive public works, expansion of public bureaucracy, and economic nationalism and nationalization. His successor, Juscelino Kubitschek, 1956-1961, promised to give Brazil 50 years of progress in 5. Juscelino, as he liked being called so, gave the nation a new capital, Brasilia. All this cost Brazil huge in economic and social terms. But no one ever mentions the human cost of all these developmental projects. These transformative changes brought in huge populations from the interiors to Sao Paulo. This is when favelas mushroomed. People paid for progress through their grinding poverty, hunger, and insecurity. Jânio Quadros chose a broom as his election symbol in a promise to sweep the corruption out of Brazilian politics. He tapped into the alienation of the poor and favelados and won the 1960 presidential election by the largest plurality in the history of Brazil. Somewhat eccentric, Quadros resigned abruptly within 8 months of his presidency, betraying the hopes of the poor and the marginalized. Lipi Biswas picks up the period of Juscelino Kubitschek for her writing. Child of Darkness by Carolina Maria de Jesus chronicles the everyday experiences of a rag picker who experiences hunger, filth, and racism in a favela in Sao Paulo. If you are unwashed, people think you are criminal. While the real problem for Maria de Jesus was she had no access to water and no money to buy soap. The diary of Maria de Jesus shows the ugly underbelly of those who are destined to live for generations in favelas, subject to poverty, deprivation, criminality, and brutality of the state. The diary gives an insight into the impact of massive transformation on the urban poor in the decades of the 50s. No denying, developmentalism in Brazil had many achievements to its credit. But the experiences of those who are on the margin and were never recorded. It was not really long back when the elites in Delhi decided to transform their city into a world-class city. And it was being prophesied that India would be in the league of the great powers by 2020. Slums are always the eyesores for the elites. The first thing done was that many slums were demolished and the inhabitants were thrown away in far-off places on the outskirts of the city. Lipi Biswas Sen compares the experiences of Maria de Jesus with those who, half a century later, in the distant city called Delhi, found themselves disposed of outside the city. Trickster City, the title of the book, chronicles the struggle and striving of poor when they transformed a barren, soulless, dusty piece of land into a living settlements full of life and joy. An official report submitted to the Indian Supreme Court in 2012 admitted that half of Delhi's population lives in slums and unauthorized colonies. The 2011 census defined slum as an area resided in yet unsuitable for human habitation. Not dissimilarly, around 22% of the population of Rio lives in favelas. In both the countries, slum intersect with informality, color, caste, gender, and religion. Globalization, surprisingly, saw an opportunity in the slums, where the states failed to notice it. Slums are creative places. They generate taxes. Take the case of Dharavi in Bombay city. This is the world's most densely populated area. Roughly 650,000 people living in 2.5 square kilometers of land. Dharavi is a $1 billion annual economy. Its leather and textile products are globally showcased for their craftsmanship. What I'm trying to say that where globalization has noticed the value of slums to maximize its profit, states have continued to look at the favelas as hotbed of criminality and ignorance. Dharavi was one of the top hot spots of coronavirus-19 infection. Social distancing is a luxury, and frequently washing hands a dream in such a region. 80% of the inhabitants in Dharavi slum use public toilets. The site of the famous film Slumdog Millionaire, its inhabitants showed a steely determination in fighting of the coronavirus-19 infection. The second sub-theme of my presentation is madmen have foreboding of the future. We all believe so, that mad people are endowed with some kind of a supreme intelligence and maybe they can see future. The author of a chapter, Amrita Raj and Aris Angela Figueiredo, deconstruct madness as described by Machado de Assis in The Alienist and Saadat Hasan Manto in Toba Tek-Singh. He is a study in satire on the society and politics in Brazil in the late 19th century and in the context of partition of India and creation of a separate state of Pakistan. As we all know, positivism had shook Brazilian elite circles in the late 19th century and early parts of the 20th. The influence of positivism can be seen in the framing of the first constitution of 1891. This is when love as a principle and order as the basis, progress as the goal, ended up being inscribed on the new Brazilian flag. In The Alienist, Machado de Assis looks critically at the achievement of the science and its ability to resolve problems under the First Republic. The doctor in The Alienist takes his faith in positivism too far when he decides to cure all the madmen of Itaguai. Not sure whether those he had put in greenhouse are mad, he ends up locking himself in the madhouse. Saadat Hasan Manto has a lot to say on the absurdities and the follies and the violence that was witnessed during the partition of India and creation of Pakistan in 1947. In their great positivist thinking, leaders of India and Pakistan allowed migration of population along religious lines. There was also, in fact, a pact called Nehru-Liaquat Pact of 1950, which thought would orderly allow exchange of population on the eastern side in Bengal. Having ignited raw passions, the political leaders of India and Pakistan were confident about their scientific beliefs and capability in moving populations back and forth. However, as Manto says, nobody had thought of exchanging the mads. Bishan Singh is a Sikh and in a madhouse somewhere in Punjab. He's seen asking everyone, where is his village? It has gone to Pakistan or it has gone to India. He's looking for his nation. He was looking for his village, which was his world, his nation. He had little idea about Pakistan and little idea about India. Manto captures the absurdity and madness that surrounds the creation of Pakistan. Borders divided families, friends, farms, and foods. From the books of history, I would like to narrate just one absurdity alone here. A British bureaucrat, Sir Cyril Redcliffe, came to India to divide the borders between India and Pakistan. Redcliffe had never been to India before. He knew no one here. He arrived in India on 8th of July 1947. He was given only 5 weeks to work out the borders of a new state called Pakistan. He completed his work within 4 weeks. On 9th August 1947, he submitted the maps proposing splitting of Punjab and Bengal into 2 halves. The new boundaries were announced on 17th August 1947, 3 days after the creation of Pakistan and 2 days after India had gained independence. The more than 3,000 kilometer long border from the Run of Kutch to the international border in Jammu and Kashmir is called the Redcliffe Line. This, in short, is the essence of India and Pakistan's never-ending conflict. A top bureaucrat, a civil servant, came from London with a pencil and a map, and within 4 weeks he drew the borders. Villages were divided, cities were awarded to either one of the 2 countries, and districts were split. And it was announced that here is India and there is Pakistan. Let me touch on the third sub-theme in my presentation, which is making of Indian nationalism. Sovan Sanyal writes his chapter on an effeminate Bengali at the Battle of Literoy. He talks of a Lieutenant Colonel Suresh, who is part of the Republican forces in Brazil around the time of abolition of monarchy. Upendra Krishna Bandyopadhyay, a Bengali writer, transforms Colonel Suresh Biswas into an instrument to make Bengalis get rid of their colonial description as effeminate. The character of Biswas challenges the colonial stereotype of that Bengalis are not fit for military services. After the revolt of 1857, British colonial administration had created 2 categories. Some of the Indian castes were called martial castes, others were declared as non-martial castes. A very fine book by Aqil Shah, a Pakistani historian, entitled The Army and Democracy, explains the colonial rationale of classifying Bengalis as non-martial. In fact, the British were worried about recruiting Bengalis into the Indian Army. The 1857 Sipahi Mutiny or the revolt was led by soldiers of the East India Company's Bengal Army. And secondly, Bengalis spearheaded the early years of the nationalist movement, and British colonial administration was worried that Bengali soldiers are too much politicized. Britain found in the Indian youth traditions to build a large army. In fact, by the year 1900, the size of the British Indian Army was huge. 200,000 Indians were part of the British Indian Army. When the First World War broke out in 1914, the number increased. By 1918, the size of the Indian Army, British Indian Army, was over 500,000. Britain used Indian soldiers for its imperialist wars in Middle East, in Southern Europe, extensively. Thousands died in these imperial wars. The fourth sub-theme I have for discussion here, I am asking a question. Why Brazilians are reading Indian writings? There are 3 chapters written by Brazilians, and they discuss contemporary Indian writings in English language. The list of these writers is very long and impressive. Anita Desai, Kamala Das, Meena Kandasamy, Rupi Kaur, Arundhati Roy, to name just a few. Why and how these writers have captured the imagination of Brazilian scholars? To my mind, there are 3 reasons. These writers are rebels, radicals, explosive, they're feminist, they speak and write without mincing words, they make a critique of neoliberalism, they find India's model of development as unsustainable, they speak loudly and clearly in defense of the rights of the Dalit, the tribals, the minorities, the women. They highlight the injustices and the violence perpetrated by the state. They can see the close nexus that exists between Indian elites and the Western elites, the economic and political both. In one of the chapters, Sandra de Jesus dos Santos captures the cultural hybridity of a modern India. She chooses 2 novels of Anita Desai, the Indian American writer, who normally captures the dilemma of longing and belonging of the Indian diaspora in the West. One of the book examined here is In Custody, which came out in 1984. It is about the life of a post-partition India, a post-partition Delhi, where the protagonist, Devan Sharma, seeks to realize his self-worth by wanting to become an Urdu poet. He finally meets the iconic Urdu poet, Noor Shah Jahan Abadi, who lives in poverty and squalor. Pursuit of fine poetry binds the 2 unlikely fellows together.
Akshay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we are now nearing the end of the talk. Would appreciate if you want.
Just give me a few minutes.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. There is a very interesting chapter about the witches and the chudels. Paranormal and the apparition exists. Delhi is known as the city of jinns. I know people who swear that they have encountered jinns. Some even claim their friendship. Here is this wonderful comparative study of 2 folklores about the witches or the Chulail or Dayan as they are called in India. This whole idea of a witch is to exercise control over someone, appropriate the personality of the other. This is not just a folklore. This whole idea of witches and Dayans is entering the mainstream religious discourse in Brazil. There have been reports of increasingly religiously motivated crimes and attacks on African religions in the favelas in Brazil. The same thing is happening in the name of witches in parts of rural India. It is with this that I find another article, another chapter by Amit Raj and Indrani Mukherjee, where they discuss liberation theology of Leonardo Boff and Dalit liberation and develop parallels between them. Finally, there is a chapter and a movie also, which traces the spirituality of the river Ganges and highlights its spiritual values. Now, finally, because time is short, I could have gone on for a few more minutes. The contributors and editors of the book, they deserve lots of congratulations, complimentation. They had set out to reflect on the present moment from the margins of hegemonic discourses, which they do. This book has produced new knowledge about issues and concerns that normally don't find a place in bilateral discussion, joint communiques, in the studies on trade, technology, diplomatic cooperation, etc. Truly, this book contributes new knowledge towards understanding Brazil and India and their partnership, which is an enduring partnership. With this, I congratulate the editors for bringing out this work, and I congratulate the organizers of this event for inviting me to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Then I would like to invite Professor Edil Silva Costa, one of the editors of the book, to say a few words. Thank you, Professor Maffei.
Senhoras e senhores, bom dia. Ladies and gentlemen, good night. It's a day very happy for me. É uma grande satisfação estarmos reunidos hoje para o lançamento do livro Interseções Culturais Brasil e Índia, que podem cultura e literatura, que é organizado por nós, por mim, professora Elisângela, professor Mukesh. O livro é fruto do colóquio Diálogos Incomuns, que foi realizado em outubro de 2018, no Centro de Estudos Hispânicos, Português, Italiano e Latino-Americano, da Jawaharlal Nehru University, em Nova Delhi. O colóquio teve o apoio da Embaixada do Brasil na Índia e foi organizado como uma atividade do projeto Potências Transnacionais Emergentes e seus Crivos Culturais, coordenado pelo professor Dr. Osmar Moreira dos Santos. Esse projeto tem o apoio da FAPESB e eu gostaria de deixar aqui registrado a importância, né, da Fundação do Amparo à Pesquisa para esse evento. Este livro, explicitando nossas aproximações e distanciamentos, ele reúne artigos, capítulos de participantes do colóquio e convidados, de modo a abrigar uma diversidade de temas, sobre poesia, cultura popular, política, estudos comparados, estudos culturais. De modo geral, ele vai tratar desses temas do ponto de vista brasileiro e indiano. Então, minha gratidão, muito obrigado a Jawaharlal Nehru University, a Embaixada no Brasil na Índia, e também a Fundação de Amparo à Pesquisa do Estado da Bahia, assim como a nossa Universidade do Estado da Bahia, aqui representada pela professora Marcléa Salles, e para que nós conseguimos chegar até aqui. Sem esse apoio, a gente não teria conseguido realizar o colóquio, nem tampouco o livro. Mas eu agradeço... Eu agradeço em especial aos nossos colegas autores desse livro, né? Aqui estamos presentes a professora Sandra de Jesus, professor Paulo Garcia, professora Elisângela Figueiredo, professora Regina Carmona e tantos outros que compõem o livro, então eu tenho um agradecimento especial aos autores, a todos nós que trabalhamos tanto para a realização disso, né? Nós, enquanto pensadores, não é, brasileiros indianos, cujo pensamento crítico revela um efetivo questionamento do momento em que vivemos e nos fornece um panorama maravilhoso, né, dos estudos contemporâneos desenvolvidos no Brasil e na Índia. Por fim, eu queria dizer que esta obra resume o nosso desejo de integração e de interseções e mostra que juntos, né, a importância de juntos respondermos a esta pergunta fundamental, né, o que podem literatura e cultura? Sua finalização e lançamento hoje já nos dá uma resposta possível. Para além das fronteiras geográficas, pelas margens dos discursos hegemônicos e com múltiplos olhares, nós ampliamos o conhecimento de quem somos. Reforçamos, assim, os nossos laços de fraternidade nas diferenças. Muito obrigada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for that very interesting talk. Now I would like to invite Professor Ari Samkhela, who wishes to say a few words about the presentation just made also by Professor Nafe. Professor Figueiredo.
It was a pleasure to hear Professor Professor Abdul Nafe words, and it was wonderful, actually. I could see that Professor Nafe spent time read each of our chapters, né? And he was captured in some way the sense of our books. And then I'm really happy that to see how he is as a specialist that he is, and Latin American studies. He couldn't understand our idea, né? As you mentioned, that our book is about the margin of hegemonic discourse. When he mentioned all that chapter, the Professor Liv Biswas chapter, and Professor Sandra de Jesus chapters, and Amiri Diraji talking about Machado de Assis. It's wonderful to see one India and one professor, you understand the sense of Machado de Assis and the alienist, and compare this with the Indian culture. And I can mention all of you, Professor Paulo Garcia, who bring also such a wonderful chapter about the gender, and Professor Indrani, and Professor Nabil Ansari, and Professor Antonia, who brings from the beginning already one wonderful question that keep our book and try to answer this question that she brings in the beginning of her chapter. And I feel that Regina Carmona, I can't forget about Regina, because she's an artist and brings some the knowledge about the ritual of the food, and some clips about the pictures of India and Brazil. Then I think that Professor Abdul Nafe could catch this essence of our book. Thanks so much, Professor. And thank you, all of you. Thank you, Professor Edil, for being my partner in this project. And Professor Edil has been working really hard for that book. And thanks so much, all my colleagues from Brazil for being here, students, scholars from Brazil, and it takes so much my students from Center of CICLAS. Thank you, Professor Dedi, Professor Mazar Azif, being here, give that opportunity to do that release of the book. And I am so glad of that event that this book it's read, and finally we can release that book. Thanks so much. Now I think we need to release the book.
Professor Asif, Mr. Brito Lima, and Professor Aris Ankela, please present us the book. Thank you.
Here.
Well, the book is finally, we've got the first glimpse of the book, which will be launched in a bigger ceremony sometime in August. But this was just a pre-release glimpse, so that, as they say, this was just the trailer. The movie is still waiting to come out. And it is now my very pleasurable work to give a vote of thanks to all of you who have joined us online and offline. I would first like to thank Professor Mazhar Asif, our Dean and our Chairperson, for his constant support and encouragement in organizing this program. I would also like to thank Professor Aris Ankela for all the energy that she brings to us, to our center, in editing books, in teaching, in every academic activity that she participates in. My great thanks also to Mr. Lucas Brito de Brito Lima for having come here and helped us show the first glimpse of the book. I would like to thank Mr. Ajay Prasad, Dr. Mukesh, Ms. Shaista Khan, also for having come and joined us offline. However, my words of thanks are also there for Mr. Ganeshan, who is our technical support and who has worked tirelessly to make sure that the function proceeds smoothly. I would also like to thank our office colleague, Mr. Surinder and Mr. Vijay Paswan, who have stayed back beyond their duty hours to make sure that all the work that you've seen has been made well. I would, of course, like to thank the Dean's Office staff, Mr. Rakesh, Mr. Abhimanyu, and all the others who have helped us to make this an eventful evening. Thank you all very much once again. Thank you.